Welcome to the third and final podcast episode. Before we begin, I need to put out a trigger warning for all my sensitive listeners because I will be discussing very serious and sensitive subjects. Okay, so a topic we all know and probably don't really love is beauty standards. In my opinion, I believe that beauty standards should just go straight down the toilet. They are constantly changing within society. They are too strict. Not everyone is welcome. The list is endlessly filled with cons. Of course, there are positives because some beauty standards are from culture. Like I knew that some countries had a long tradition of girls that always wore beautiful long braids filled with flowers and other things in them. However, not all cultures are like this, and some may have extremely strict beauty standards due to their ideals. But overall, I just believe that beauty standards have definitely shifted to be more sexualized to attract a special someone rather than involving something like culture. In the past, beauty standards were rather based on evolution because it made us see what we deem acceptable and attractive. Evolution has shown that mates are chosen due to specific qualities to ensure healthy offspring. As humans, we still continue to mentally and subtly look for a good mate. However, things began to turn more sour as we brought more specifics. Beauty is linked to history, especially the stereotypes between men and women. Due to expectations pressed towards both genders, this caused expectations and ideals of beauty and physical traits. Beauty standards also have fallen under racism, capitalism, imperialism due to certain expectations and societal expectations. Beauty has grown from both mistakes and their overall past. However, my issue is that we don't live in the past and we shouldn't bring the past back. Instead, we should be learning how to involve everyone into the standard and allow everyone to be able to contribute. I believe that there are certainly differences within society, especially between men and women, and beauty standards is part of this difference. An Instagram poll from my story that involved around 200 people asked, "Do you believe that there are different beauty standards for men and women?" 96% of people said yes and 4% said no. This poll is just sad. I feel as though this should be equal. There is a definite mistreatment with women and how they're treated regarding their bodies and constant reminders of how or what they should be doing with their daily habits involving food or activities. But men, I feel as though they don't get the same treatment. However, there are things that do happen to them daily. During my interview spree at my high school, I asked, "Do you believe there are different standards for men and women regarding beauty? Going off of that, do you believe that these standards are affecting mental health statuses?" Here is Jensine Wagner once again, and this is what she had to say.
I definitely do think there are different standards for men and women regarding beauty. I feel like it is easier for men to be considered like pretty or like handsome, but then with women, when you're looking at like their pictures, it's everyone just tears them down and they look for all the negatives instead of like all the positives, so it's harder to be considered like pretty and like perfect. I think these are affecting mental health like statuses because it makes you like look at your pictures and tear yourself down, and instead of looking at all the positives, you're looking at all the negatives and how you're not like pretty when actually you are.
Here is Allison Sharada, and this is her input. I believe 100% that there is a drastic difference in beauty standards for men and women. I think women have a harder time fitting these beauty standards that are set by society compared to standards that are set for men. There is a huge list of expectations for women in society, like having a flat stomach, pretty hair, thin or hourglass body, and more on the personality side. There are things like women being innocent, pure, and like that wifey material that's been brought up more than recently in our society. I'm not saying that men also don't face societal standards of beauty or masculinity, but I feel that it's been happening a lot longer and consistently with women. And here's Samantha Mira once again, and this is what she had to say.
I do think that there are different standards for men and women regarding beauty. I think that they have like the same general standard, but it's a lot stricter on women than it is on men. So I think most people, the standard is they want them to be like skinny and fit, like athletic almost. But I do think that people give more leeway to men than they do women. I do believe that these standards are affecting mental health statuses because when you're growing up, you just see tons of like pictures or magazines of people who are like the quote unquote ideal standard, and you kind of want to be that when you grow up, but it's just not the same for everybody. Like people have different metabolisms and their bodies are just different, so it's not really fair to just have one standard when there's so many different types of people.
So overall, I believe that beauty standards are incredibly unrealistic. I personally don't think they should exist because not only do they affect millions of people, but it hasn't changed for the better. The same Instagram poll that I mentioned earlier also asked, do you think the dominant narrative of beauty expectations within society has changed for the better or for worse? 39% of people said better and 61% of people said worse. As a society, we are aware of the unrealistic expectations, and I can tell that people are trying to fix them according to the 39%. But otherwise, it's almost like we're creating no justice for ourselves. As I interviewed students at BHS, I asked them to define unrealistic beauty standards / expectations. Here's Allison Sherrata once again, and this is what she had to say. For me, an unrealistic beauty standard is when an individual feels that they have to change their physical appearance to fit what society wants them to present themselves as. This could be someone trying to change their appearance, such as clothes, makeup, personality, but for the sake of fitting in with society. It's one thing to change something about yourself because you want to. For example, I wanted to get highlights in my hair and go a little bit blonder, but I did it because I wanted to do it for myself. I didn't want to change my hair because society thinks that blondes are prettier than brunettes. Overall, I just believe that unrealistic beauty standards is something that society creates, and it's having a lot of individuals in our generation chasing this ideal image when in reality, it's causing them to lose their inner self and their overall self-image. And finally, here's Samantha Mira and what she had to say on the matter.
I define unrealistic beauty standards as the set mold which most of society either looks up to or is attracted to. What makes it unrealistic is that it doesn't pertain to everyone, even though everybody's body varies from person to person.
So overall, I feel from these interviews that because we're growing as adults and entering the society, there is a possibility for change since we understand that there is obviously some things that are wrong. I feel as though because we have such a strong input within my generation, and I believe millennials as well, it's because of the way that we grew up. From the Instagram poll that I mentioned before, I also asked, do you believe that growing up, the beauty expectations were toxic? 78% of people said yes, and 22% of people said no. Obviously, how you grew up and what celebrities and idolized people were consistently talked about, it seemed as though the majority believed that there was indeed a toxicity. These icons kind of created a stepping stone to produce more unrealistic expectations. For example, in the 2000s, we had Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, who were incredibly skinny, wore low-rise jeans, blonde hair, and tan skin. Everyone wanted to look like them. However, someone who may not be able to become skinny due to their body functions or tries too hard to go over the top skinny, this can create issues with people and how they see themselves and create unhealthy habits involving food and their bodies. We need nutrition, and mental health issues like anorexia creates a huge problem for your body because food is fuel, not an enemy. Our bodies need food for energy. And of course, there are many other mental health issues that can stem from beauty standards like binge eating disorders, bulimia, and pica. Everyone is affected by these: men, women, LGBTQIA, people of color, everyone. Going on, beauty standards exist because people follow them, and this creates a larger issue because then problems with things like masculinity and femininity occur. During my interviewing spree, I asked, do you believe that there is toxic masculinity or femininity within today's society? Here's Allison Sherrata, and this is what she had to say. I totally believe that there is toxic masculinity and femininity within today's society because I've seen it for myself. I know a lot of people that are males tell me that they don't want to cry or express how they really feel because they were told it makes them appear weak, and that they should be the shoulders to cry on. I've also known a lot of male friends who believe that they have to prove their masculinity in society by doing manly things. And I believe that this is just so wrong and so toxic for the mindset. Likewise, I've experienced toxic femininity in my life a lot. There was one time I told my grandfather that I wanted to go to med school when I'm older and become an emergency room doctor. And he told me, just become a nurse because women have an easier time with that than med school. Another example is that I told my ex-boyfriend that I usually go to the gym to lift for outdoor track and swim, and he said to me, wouldn't you rather just have a smaller figure because that would seem easier to swim, right? And there are a lot of other instances that I've experienced, like people hitting on me in the drive-thru when I'm only 18 and they are 65 years old or higher. And finally, here's Samantha Mira on the matter.
I think that there's both toxic masculinity and femininity within today's society, but I feel like our society is in like the midst of changing and being more accepting of all people. While lots of people agree that men and women can do anything they want to or dress however they want, I feel like people are still upset if a boy decides to wear a dress or if a woman decides she doesn't want to have children, and many other scenarios like that.
Though a portion of my interviewees were women, there are a lot of problems regarding both men and women, or the idea of being a man or woman. I believe that expectations have become very controlling, creating a smaller and smaller leeway for people to fit into these expectations. Like I said before, I believe that it's definitely been sexualized more and more. This can be really affecting on someone, as everyone has the natural reaction of wanting to fit in without seeing how it may play out in the end. Overall, we can see how society was a consistent issue regarding mental health, and we as a community need to begin changing that. Before we end, I would like to thank those who were featured in this podcast, and for everyone listening. Also, please, if you're struggling, call a mental health hotline or even communicate with a doctor or a professional. Hopefully you enjoyed my podcast, as I myself really wanted listeners to enjoy every word and episode. Please feel free to reflect on everything you have learned or wanted to even tell others about. Like I have frequently said within this podcast, that it is important to talk about serious subjects even if they come off scary. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed.